We just had our first official tournament of 2025, and with it, our first chance to look at how some of the new teams that formed in the break are now doing. However, it was the old teams that absolutely stole the show, including Peterbot setting yet again another world record. I want to talk about the tournament, who I think is looking good, and which of the new teams I think could actually win FNCS. There's a lot to talk about. Let's jump into it. We'll kick off going through the NA leaderboard, who's playing in the NA FNCS Division 1 finals this week, and we have to talk about yet again another world record being broken by Peterbot. We have Peterbot, Cold and Ritual finishing on 1,328 points. They played 15 matches, they won 6 of them, getting over 320 eliminations, having an average elims of over 21 per game, and still maintaining a top 6 average placement. They played absolutely phenomenally, and if you're sick of hearing about Peterbot this, Peterbot that, unfortunately, you're gonna have to keep hearing about it. While they're putting up these numbers, everyone is still gonna be talking about Peterbot. Because they had already qualified in the first day, they ended up going live for the second day and streamed all of their remaining games as well. And if you watched any of their streams, you probably would have seen how high the vibes were. This trio is actually looking really good, and it seems like they're having a lot of fun playing together as well. So I'm super excited whether they can keep up this going into finals. We did have, a few rumors of, oh my gosh, Peterbot's washed. 2025 is where he's going to fall off, because in the Eval Cup finals this week, they didn't win a game. They didn't play particularly well. It's one of the worst showings we've seen from Peterbot's teams in a finals, but it's the Eval Cup. Some teams take it super seriously, some don't. I'm not sure whether Peterbot's team was or wasn't, but they clearly were taking this opens pretty seriously. We also had a really insane fight where Peterbot managed to 1v3 Rapid, Poyo, and Bolt for the win.
I think it's high.
2v1.
He actually went hello. He's in this, that's why you can't see him. Nice. Nice. You can play your siphon, you have so many mats.
Nice.
Oh my god, P.
That was balls.
King P.
Now, to be fair, Rapid, Poyo, and Bolt obviously all weren't full health, but it was still a phenomenal finish from Peterbot, and they still did really well in the tournament as well. They finished on 1,051 points in 18 matches, a phenomenal performance, but again, when it's, like 300 points behind first, it doesn't seem so good. But I will shout out, when we're talking about the Eval Cup finals, Rapid, Poyo, and Bolt put up an insanely consistent performance in the finals. They won the first match, but then also got a 6 elim fourth, a 7 elim third, and a 5 elim ninth. They were the most consistent trio on NA when it came to the set lobby finals. So I'm really excited to see how this storyline develops between Peterbot and his ex-teammates when it comes to the finals. Now, another team you should be used to seeing at the top of these leaderboards, we have Batman Booger, Mason Yomzo. I keep calling them the Opens Warriors, which usually means a team does well in Opens but bad in finals. It's not that they do bad in finals, they're just usually winning almost every Opens, or at least in the top 3. They are so consistent in that top 3. In 4th place, we had Seek, G-Money, and OSID, a very underrated team in my opinion. And then we had Vidil, Cooper, and Sphinx. Vidil is officially in North America playing with his trio. I've got to give credit to Vidil. He missed his flight a few days ago. He managed to play day 1 of the Opens from Germany, then instantly got on a plane, flew to the United States, and then played the next qualifier the next day from North America. So Vidil is now officially on 0 ping and looking really solid. Then we had Muzz, Clicks, and Rise. They have been so insanely consistent right now. Muzz, Clicks, and Rise also talked about how they did a 6-hour VOD review session after day 1 before day 2, and it really did show. They didn't do poorly on day 1, but they did extremely well on day 2. You can see that Rise was feeling a lot more confident. It's some of the best IGLing I've seen. His comms, he seemed really confident. I'm excited for this trio going forward. Then we have a brand new trio in 7th place. I talked about them in my last video. Reet, being dropped by Booger, has found himself onto a new trio, and it's Skittles, Reet, and Chimp, and they came 7th overall in their first tournament together, playing really well. I know a lot of people are kind of expecting this trio to split. The vibes seem a little bit interesting when you watch them on stream. They're playing really well. They don't seem to be getting along that well, but they have just started playing together, so I'm excited to see whether this trio sticks. I think they clearly have massive potential, and we'll see how they go in a set lobby. I don't want to go through the whole leaderboard of who qualified, but I did want to give a shout out to the 2 European teams who qualified on NA. We had Cringe, Velo, and Xinox, who managed to come in 16th overall, and then Seti, Hari, and Camby, who came in 25th. So we have 2 EU teams playing in this week's NA Divisional Cup Finals, which will be really exciting to see how they play out. If you're a big Seti and Cammy fan like I am, you're probably super excited to see how consistent this trio has been doing. Hari is a phenomenal pickup for Seti and Cammy, who a lot of people were starting to say they finally fell off. They finally lost their consistency. They're not who they used to be. They have come into trios where they bang and they're playing phenomenally, not just on EU, but also on NA, showing how much they're grinding. That means they played day 1 and day 2 qualifiers on EU and qualified for finals, and then backed it up by playing day 1 and day 2 on NA. It is a very, very big time commitment, especially when it finishes at like 4 in the morning for Europeans to try to qualify on NA, and it shows a lot of confidence, which they did back up. Whenever I talk about Peterbot's trio, it feels like I instantly talk about Venos, and this is no exception. We have Vico, Veno, and Flixie closing out EU in first place on 928 points. It is worth mentioning we didn't have any trio on EU break the 1,000 points, despite having 2 trios on NA. It's also worth mentioning that the qualification on NA is 610 points, whereas on EU it jumped all the way up to 652 points. It is over 40 points harder to qualify on EU than NA, with the same amount of teams playing in Division 1. Now, this obviously is going to have a big factor when you have teams like Peterbot and Poyo's team taking all the points at the top of the leaderboard. The more points they get above qualification means the other teams don't get as many, which makes qualification lower because they have less points. It does fit the narrative that a lot of people would talk about with which region's harder, and a lot of people, again, myself included, would usually say that, you know, the top 33 on EU is more difficult than the top 33 on NA, but the best of the best on NA can still hold up against the best of the best on EU, which is what we've seen internationally, at least with Peterbot's team at Global. So it seems like that storyline is continuing with trios. It is harder to break into that top 33 on EU, but if you want to win on NA, you still got to take down some Titan teams that I'm sure would do really, really well on EU. So I'm interested to see how that develops coming into Globals this year, how we see these teams stack up when it comes to LAN. As far as the rest of the EU leaderboard, we had Kombek, Blaha, and Mixon, another Polish trio in second place, Tripper and Thomas and Fredoxy, the Danes, in third, and then Seti, Hari, and Cammy in fourth. So not only did they qualify on NA, they also came top 4 on EU as well. Then we had Ping, Wox, and Malabuka rounding out the top 5. So a super stacked top 5 on EU, but again, across the board, it was basically a who's who. These 2-round qualifiers do lead to some extremely stacked finals. I'm so excited to watch them every single week. Pretty much all the other big trios you'd expect made finals, including Mongraal, Mr. Savage, and Panzer finishing on 697 points. I will mention, if you're a Savage fan, you're not going to like hearing this, we did have Huddy's team also make the finals, and yes, they have confirmed they will be contesting Mr. Savage, Mongraal, and Panzer. If you guys missed the Eval Cup finals, they ended up going 2-2. So Mr. Savage's team won 2 games off spawn, Huddy's team won 2 games off spawn. You're probably wondering, why doesn't one of these teams leave? Why are they still griefing each other? When whichever team wins off spawn goes on to get pretty much a top 10 almost every single time. Both trios know if they lock down this drop uncontested, they can easily top 10 grand finals or even more. It's a phenomenal drop, especially now that Chap, Chicho, and Teeny have left. They have stopped dropping Night Shift Forest, which means I'm guessing they won't be W keying or playing as aggressively onto Mongraal's team. We now have Malabuka's team dropping at the Forest, who don't tend to play as aggressively off spawn, and that's what we've seen in a lot of these cash cups at least. So that could hopefully give Mr. Savage and Huddy's team a bit more of an advantage, where if one of them can get the edge and win more of the spawn fights, they won't instantly get third-partied and wiped out like they were before, and can go on to have a better game. In saying that though, Chap, Chicho, and Teeny unfortunately did just miss out on making finals by 1 placement, so maybe their new drop spot over at Dojo isn't going as well, and they are actually going to start dropping back at the Forest. I don't know, but I'm sure Chap, Chicho, and Teeny are not happy about not making a finals. If I was expecting any team to potentially try to split or look for new teammates and start a bit of a snaking on the EU, I have eyes on this team. A 34th is still amazing. They're not doing terrible. I'm not saying they need to split, but we know there's been some chemistry issues with this trio, and when they're switching drops and they're not making finals, I have to imagine their vibes are a little bit shot.